So obviously, Kev, you have really got to know Kobe over the years. I mean, you've covered sports and entertainment news, and I really don't know one person who has transcended those two fields more than Kobe Bryant, which I think is why his death was impacted the whole world. Looking back on it a year later, what do you remember about that day? Like, what was your reaction, and what were you thinking about?
Well, Denny, we were getting ready for the Grammys and we were getting ready for the actual show. So I was in my trailer, and when the news broke, I was just like, not true. Stop. Y'all stop. He's fine. And so it was first the devastation of the news sinking in because Shawnee O'Neal was actually at the gym. Her daughter was playing in the game, and Shawnee said, yes, this is real. That's Shaquille O'Neal's ex-wife. And then it was figuring out how we were going to change this Grammy show to honor Kobe. All of a sudden, what would have been a festive red carpet took on a different meaning because we were in the building where he had played his entire career, where he was worshiped by people. Those same people walking the red carpet would sit in those seats around the court and worship Kobe. And then so many got to know him, especially in the second half of his life after he finished basketball, and fell in love with him.
You've covered a lot of tragic news stories and celebrity deaths, but why do you think this loss was so tough on everyone?
Kobe spent his entire career in one city, and think how much that doesn't happen in this day and age. And he spent his entire career in the epicenter of the entertainment industry. And then after he left basketball, after he did all these insane things on the court, was one of the greatest ever to play, then he became this figure in the community with what he was doing with Gigi and her basketball team. But also, let's not forget, he won an Oscar. And when Kobe went to the Oscar luncheon, every star there wanted to stand next to Kobe. Every star wanted to talk to Kobe. Everybody just wanted to take a moment with the guy they had cheered on so much. And he loved it. He loved this second phase of his life. He was so happy. He was spending so much time with his girls. He was spending time with Vanessa. And so everybody sensed how happy he was. The last time I saw him was at a screening for Just Mercy, and he was so happy. He talked about how he had screened the movie for Natalia and her friends, and he was like, come out and see Gigi play. Come, you're gonna love it. You're gonna love what I'm doing with the girls. And so he had found this passion, and it's just, he was taken from us at a point where we all kind of had realized why we loved him so much.
And, obviously he was so much more than a basketball player.
Yeah.
And over the years, you really got to know Kobe as a husband and as a father. What did you learn about Kobe as Natalia, Gianna, Bianca, and Capri's dad?
He loved his children. I mean, he loved them. And look, we all know that is where the whole helicopter thing came from. So he could get home to spend more time with his kids. And that's what's so heartbreaking. He really was embracing doing stuff with these girls. I remember being in Columbus, Ohio at the women's Final Four, and I'm walking to my seats and I look over and there's Kobe and Gianna sitting there watching the game. And I'm like, what are you doing here? He's like, what are you doing here? And we were both just laughing and, hanging out and had a quick exchange. But it was those moments. And Vanessa and the girls would sit about 3 rows in front of me at the Lakers games. And he always liked to find them and see them and say hello and give them a little look, maybe a kiss to the girls each and every game when they came. So it was such a huge part of his life, and he loved being a father. Those girls meant the world to him. They meant everything.
What can you tell us about his bond with Gigi? Because obviously, he was grooming her to be the next big basketball star.
So the biggest loss that I really feel that with Kobe, besides you don't want to lose anyone, but is what he and Gianna were going to do for women's basketball. All of a sudden, there was a little girl that little boys and grown men were watching, and they were raving about her exploits, and they were talking about what she was doing. He was elevating the cause of women's basketball. He loved coaching those girls. He loved teaching his team. So I think that what we lost was a woman who was going to create that bridge to basketball for both men and women. She would have had an amazing signature shoe. She would have been a big time recruit that would have gone to UConn, as we all know. She loved UConn, but she also would have been the face of women's basketball. And the person standing with her each step of the way was arguably one of the greatest players in the history of the game. And so that and all the things he did with for women's basketball, I loved it because I love the women's game, and I just the equality that he was bringing to it and the understanding. And he used to say, if you're a basketball fan, then you love all basketball, and there's no difference. And that's what Gigi was poised to be, the game changer.
Absolutely. So many basketball fans mourn that loss, you know, and I actually want to take us back to that memorial. You covered and attended that public memorial at Staples Center. What do you remember most about that day?
Well, I remember the Michael Jordan speech and where he joked. But I remember just watching Vanessa and how, you know, her friends were there to kind of soothe her. And I don't know how she did it that day.
Yeah.
I've covered a couple of stories where it's been really tough, where you're like, I don't know how these people are standing up. When Jennifer Hudson's family was brutally murdered, she had to go into the police station and identify her nephew. I don't know how she did that. I don't understand how Vanessa was there that day and able to speak, and how you move on from something like that. So her strength was incredible. And I just remember just watching her. Remember Beyonce rubbing her and her shoulder and comforting her. And I just remember the other players looking around at the greatest players in basketball, every one of them there, who had all had this connection to Kobe, and their stunned disbelief, and they all had this love for this man who had meant so much to the game of basketball and the game of life.
That's when like people like even Michael Jordan brought some moments of levity. Snoop Dogg made us laugh. There was a lot of love and support in that room for sure. And speaking of that, I mean, looking back on all the times you chatted with Kobe, what's your favorite and fondest memory with him?
One other thing I would say is a really cool thing getting to do with Kobe was, you know, would always do the launches of his shoes. Whenever he'd do the launch of the shoes, I'd host the launch and the new version of the Mamba. And I remember one time we did the launch, and all of a sudden Kobe's packing up, and I'm like, dude, I got to interview you. What are you doing? You're leaving. He's like, Kevin, I got to go. And I was like, no, Kobe, I got to get this interview. And he's like, if I'm late to pick up the girls from school because of this, I'm coming back after you. And I just laughed, and I was like, I love that fact. Go, just go, go, man, go.